Good evening and welcome to the 2022 Primary Candidate Forum for Minnesota Senate District 54, sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Today we are gathered at Hometown Bank. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney at Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber. I will serve as moderator. All Republican candidates for Minnesota Senate District 54 were invited to participate in preparation for the contested primary election on August 9th. Senator Eric Pratt is with us this evening. Ms. Natalie Barnes is unable to attend due to personal reasons. Today we will ask a series of questions. The candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. We will begin with a 2-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Eric Pratt, and I currently serve as your senator in the Minnesota Legislature. You know, I grew up in this area. I grew up in Prior Lake. My mom was a teacher here in Shakopee for 25 years, and after I graduated, I went on to get my degree in economics and my master's in finance. We eventually moved back, and I raised my family here. I have my wife Tina and I raised our son Cameron, who's currently still at the University of Michigan, and my daughter Sammy, who's getting her degree in physical therapy. I also had a long career, 30 years in banking and financial services, where I really learned a lot about how to get things done in a complex organization. What's been interesting is in the Senate, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of different issues. As chair of the Jobs Committee, I worked to get small business reopened safely during the pandemic. I met with small businesses who saw inconsistency in the governor's emergency orders, why some businesses were allowed to stay open and others were closed. I often said that the only small business, or the only business that's not essential, is the one that you don't own. We pressed the governor to lift those sanctions earlier than later with some success. First, we got golf courses, small manufacturers, landscapers, dock installers approved, and then later we pushed to reopen small retailers and restaurants very safely. In fact, we used a program that was developed by Scott County businesses that was followed. This legislative session, I focused on really a few key areas. One was managing the record surplus. As a high-tax state, we wanted to make sure that taxpayers got back the extra money they had paid in. To that, we paid off $2.7 billion in unemployment debt that was directly related to the governor's executive orders. We promised small business we would hold them harmless, and we kept that promise. And we wanted to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits and lower tax rates for all families. We worked on public safety. I'm proud to be supported by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, and we worked hard to recover still from the COVID pandemic and our response to it. Thank you.
Senator Pratt, in your opinion, what is the role of state government?
The role of state government is really to function in between, to represent all Minnesotans. When I first joined the Senate, my predecessor said you were elected by your district, but you're a state senator and you have to represent everybody in the state. And I'm not just a Republican senator. I'm a senator for everybody here in the district. My role is to try to make the lives better for Minnesotans in an ever-changing world. And as the chair of the Jobs Committee, we really focus on making Minnesota a great place to do business. We want to balance the rights of employers and employees. We want to make Minnesota a great place to invest in. We also want to make sure that we have Minnesotans that are ready not only for the jobs of today, but for the jobs of tomorrow. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time focused on making sure that the Minnesota economy continues to grow and thrive while supporting our local units of governments, our city council, school boards, and county boards.
Senator Pratt, what makes an effective legislator?
I've given this idea a lot of thought. We've got a lot of people in the legislature that like to fight. The thing is that oftentimes you need to fight to win. And that takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of patience. The legislature is a place where you build relationships. I'm not necessarily always trying to build friendships, but I am trying to build working relationships. And it's a lot like the corporate world, where you'd have a disagreement with a manager in another division. it was incumbent on us to work out our problems, to work out our differences, and try to come to a solution that met the company's needs. And we're trying to come to solutions that meet the needs of Minnesota families. And so we have to, even despite our differences, we have to find a way to work together. And that's what I've been trying to do, to find ways to improve the lives of Minnesotans, to allow them to keep more money in their pockets, allow them to live in safe communities.
Senator Pratt, what were your greatest accomplishments during your past service in the Minnesota Senate?
You know, I think first and foremost was repaying the unemployment debt coming out of the pandemic. That was one where we worked really hard through the interim between 2021 and 2022 to come to an agreement with the governor's office and have a plan. And it took a lot of patience. It took a lot of work to get that through the House of Representatives. But that's part of the job. You've got to have that patience. You've got to have that diligence to get it through. The legislature isn't a place where you can go and just tell somebody what to do. We all work. We all have election certificates. We all are equals. We all have an equal vote. And so the trick that I've learned is trying to influence without authority. I can't tell any other senator how to think, but I'll try to work to influence them to my way of thinking.
Senator Pratt, being an elected official is a busy and time-consuming profession, as you know. How do you ensure that you are engaging with your constituents on a regular basis in order to address their priorities?
That's a great question, because it's one where it's not always my strength to do that. I've tried to hold town halls, and I've had minimal attendance sometimes, and we try to do a lot, some on Facebook. But what I've heard from constituents this cycle is that they would have liked to have heard more. So I'm putting out during session, I'm putting out a monthly newsletter that folks can subscribe to. I'm going to do some more on social media. But it's something that's very interesting that I've seen just change in my time in the Senate, is that communication with constituents is so much more important, and I need to catch up on that. And I recognize that hasn't always been my strength. But I do meet with local businesses. I do meet with constituents on a regular basis, and have more one-on-one conversations. That's usually where I'm more comfortable. Senator
Pratt, if you are reelected, what are the most important issues you would like to address in the next legislative session?
There's a couple of issues, and they often carry over from where we're at today. I think first and foremost is we're likely to have a budget surplus that's even greater than the $9.2 billion surplus that we had last time. And so I'd like to continue to work to give senior citizens, to eliminate the tax on Social Security benefits for our senior citizens, because quite honestly, they've already paid taxes on that money. And we need to keep those senior citizens here in Minnesota, here in Scott County, because they're such a great resource, and we're losing so many to other states. I'd like to continue to work on public safety. I've been working with the police and firefighters to make sure that when they get permanently disabled on the job, that they have the financial resources to keep their families intact and viable. So, and then finally, I'm still interested in the jobs and making sure that we're attracting businesses that will help bring back domestic manufacturing and business that may have gone overseas, bring it back to Minnesota, bring it back to the United States, so that we don't have many of the supply chain issues that we have today.
Senator Pratt, how would you approach an issue that is important to your constituents if you personally disagree with the majority opinion?
I can honestly say I don't know that that's happened. Because in some ways we're a district that, when I think of Shakopee is a very even purple part of the district. And I think my greatest asset, and someone told me this just a couple of weeks ago, that I'm a very active listener. maybe one of my communication problems is that sometimes I'd rather listen than talk. But I try to find the areas of opportunity. Try to find the areas of agreement in those issues. And I'll tell you, there have been times when I've been convinced by constituents to take us a certain path, or figured out how to meld my values in with what we were trying to do. The idea is find a problem and then find the common ground to solve that problem.
Senator Pratt, how should the legislature respond to the state budget surplus next year?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to look at the state budget surplus and say we've over-collected taxes. It's really that simple. Minnesota is the 5th highest tax state in the country, and Minnesota families are hurting with the rising cost of inflation. So I think we have to come back with, again, eliminating the tax on Social Security benefits. We're one of only 12 states that currently taxes Social Security. And we have to cut our tax rate. Our lowest tax rate is higher than the highest tax rate of 23 other states. So it's not about one-time checks, right? One-time checks, gives you a little bit of infusion, but I want to make sure that Minnesota families, Scott County families, have more money in their pockets month after month, year after year, to address the rising inflation that we continue to see.
Many economists agree that we're facing a high risk of a recession. What should be done to accelerate economic growth here in Minnesota?
Well, again, I think we have to make Minnesota an attractive place to do business. When you look at the surveys, Minnesota typically ranks in the bottom half of business-friendly areas. And that's not to say that you forget about employees, right? We try to balance the rights and responsibilities of employers and employees. But employees need employers, and employers need employees. And so I think again, tax cuts to induce them to come here. I had a conversation with some manufacturers that won't open a business here because we don't have a program in our state colleges and universities for clean manufacturing, which is needed for pharmaceuticals, which is needed for some of the high-tech areas. And so I really want to focus on really bringing in high-tech jobs back to Minnesota. When I was a kid, I remember this was kind of a hub for technology. We had Honeywell, Control Data, Cray Research. I think we can really be a technology hub once again.
Senator Pratt, what are the top issues regarding policing and public safety, and what reforms do you support?
Our police and peace officers do just a really phenomenal job overall. I think we can say there may be a few bad apples in the bunch, but everyone that I've seen has been outstanding, and I've been really impressed with our local police departments, how they've built relationships within the community and the various sub-communities within the city. And I think that's one of the reasons why people move here, is because we do have safe, welcoming communities. It's not so much about what we need to do to reform policing. It's that in many cases, police officers haven't been at the table unless the Senate Republicans bring them in. And we want to we're losing more police officers to retirement than we have coming through the training program. So we've spent a lot of time, and I've helped co-author legislation to recruit and retain police officers, as well as make sure that they're taken care of if anything happens to them on the job.
Senator Pratt, how does the state currently regulate the purchase of firearms by individuals, and what changes, if any, are needed?
Right now, in order to purchase a firearm, you have to go through a background check. And I push to get And we've had some breakdowns in that system, and I've pushed to get that system working better, to have the courts put the information into the NICS system, which is the database that the BCA uses on a background check to make sure that we have all the information. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I think you have the right to carry and bear, to the right to own and bear arms. I do think there's a little bit of a difference when we get to carrying a weapon in public. I think that you should, I think we have a good system here in Minnesota where you go through a training program and you get a permit to carry after going through that background check. You're told what your rights and responsibilities are if you are carrying in public. But I would like to see that expiration lengthened. I think a 5-year expiration is too short. So to make it less onerous on gun owners so that we're taking guns out of the hands of bad people, but not infringing on the rights of law-abiding citizens.
Senator Pratt, what is your position regarding abortion, and what should be the law in Minnesota?
Well, I have always been pro-life, and I continue to be pro-life. And a recent decision by the Minnesota courts, I think, was extremely disturbing because we had, I thought, some common sense protections in place. Certainly, the state Supreme Court, regardless of what the U.S. Supreme Court decided on overturning Roe versus Wade, the state Supreme Court has found that there is a right to privacy in our Minnesota Constitution, and it guarantees the right for a woman to choose an abortion. With that, we put some guardrails in place that someone who was performing that abortion had to be a physician in case something went wrong, that minors had to get parental consent. Those are all really common sense things that I think we should expect, and the court and abortion activists have just overturned, and so I'll be fighting to put those common sense protections back in the law.
Senator Pratt, what is the role of state government in making child care affordable?
That's a difficult question because we've got more working moms today than ever before, and they're so important to the economy. When I talk to child care providers, there's a couple of things that really influence the increasing cost of child care. One is labor, right? The rising cost of living is causing upward pressure on wages, and those have to be passed through to parents. But also, we have extremely stringent regulation that I think probably overregulates the system, and I've talked to many providers about various aspects that are low-value regulations that seem to increase the cost. And we need to make, again, it goes back to being a business-friendly state. We have to make the state a friendly place for entrepreneurs to invest in their businesses, and these child cares are vital businesses to our economy.
Senator Pratt, what is the best way to make health care accessible for all Minnesotans?
Well, I'm an unapologetic capitalist, so for me, it tends to be competition is the best way to keep healthcare costs lower. One of the best things we've done so far was be able to put in a reinsurance plan for health insurance. The federal government had that in when the Affordable Care Act was first in place, and as soon as that reinsurance was lifted, we started seeing 60-70% annual increases in insurance premiums. And then once we put reinsurance back in place here in the state, we saw that drop significantly. In addition, and that really helps the people with chronic and pre-existing conditions. We've always had, since 1976, we've had protections in place for people with chronic and pre-existing conditions. Lifting regulations on telemedicine, so being able to use today's technology to help treat patients, I think, is another great place to start. And I think we have to focus on getting more healthcare professionals in science and technology into the system. We just recently pressed to get the nurse compact passed, meaning that we could bring in out-of-state nurses when we were short. And I think that's another important step as well. But from a cost standpoint, just removing some of the barriers that continue to raise costs.
Senator Pratt, what is the role of state government in making housing available and affordable?
You know, I've talked to a lot of builders, and really what's driving the costs of homes right now are three things: land, lumber, and labor. Lumber is up 300% from where it was pre-2020. It's just amazing. And as we continue to see backlogs in materials, we're seeing skyrocketing prices. I believe the Met Council has a role in this, having restricted land use within the metropolitan area. And when you look outside the MUSA line, there are vast differences in the prices of land within the MUSA line and outside the MUSA line. And I think we have to take a look at reform within the Met Council. And then, you know, I think as we here in Scott County have a unique position that we're growing extremely fast, and we have to make sure that that development pays for itself and doesn't become a burden on our existing taxpayers.
Senator Pratt, do you believe that state government should be taking steps right now to address climate change? And if so, what kind of measures would you support?
You know, climate change is one of those highly politicized terms. I got a chance to serve on the Energy Committee, and I take a little bit different approach to that. Look, we all want clean air. We all want clean water. And it's not all about, and I don't really care how we get our power as long as we get it. But it has to be safe, it has to be reliable, and it has to be affordable. You know, I've been an advocate of lifting the nuclear moratorium. If you want to talk about decarbonized energy, nuclear power is a zero emissions form of power that can be ramped up and ramped down very quickly. I'm not opposed to wind and solar. If someone wants to invest in them, I just don't think the state ought to subsidize it. And there's some terrific technologies in coal where they're doing carbon capture and putting the carbon either under the ground to store it or turning it into industrial uses. So, but this isn't just a Minnesota problem. This is a worldwide problem. The United States is one of the cleanest producers of energy, and it's really overseas in some of the developing countries that we have to be cognizant of. We can't have our own citizens hurt by expensive, unreliable energy. We have to, especially as we've seen during a couple of the solar vortex or winter vortexes, solar and wind just completely shut down. We needed that base load power in order to keep our homes warm and people safe, and so gas, clean coal, nuclear, you know, along with hydro, solar, and wind, they all, you know, I think we have to look at it as an all of the above portfolio.
Senator Pratt, what changes are needed in state support for post-secondary education?
This is an area that I don't spend a lot of time in. But you know, when I think of our post-secondary education, I really look at it from two different standpoints, right? Certainly, traditionally, we see the college university system. And I'll admit that I'm frustrated with the college university system and the rising cost of a college degree. It's really become unaffordable and unattainable in many cases. But when I think of post-secondary education, I also think about high school kids coming out and getting jobs in the trades. they can be making, a six-figure salary in many cases once they get a few years of experience under their belt with no debt. We've got to quit looking at post-secondary as every kid goes to college and start meeting the needs of kids, because not every kid is built for college. We see that in the dropout rates. And then they end up kind of wandering around aimlessly for a few years. So I'm really impressed with the academies of Shakopee and how they're exposing kids to these various types of careers and linking their education to potential careers.
Senator Pratt, what is the most significant transportation issue facing our community, and how should it be addressed at the state level?
Well, the number one issue for our area, in my mind, is the 169 corridor. It's the lifeline of commerce here in Scott County. And we have one of the most dangerous corridors on 169 right now in between Belle Plaine and Shakopee. And it has to do with that last stoplight at the corner of 282 and 169, but then also where we have a lot of gravel trucks and semi trucks crossing at uncontrolled intersections. They're crossing, a busy highway where traffic's generally going 70 miles an hour, throughout the day. And so improvements on 169, not only to improve public safety, but to improve commerce. I mean, we're doing a lot of work in Savage right now to make sure that the ports of Savage can handle increased volume. I heard a statistic that 60% of Minnesota's agricultural product at some point in time travels on 169. And so I think that's the top transportation infrastructure issue we have.
Senator Pratt, do you support the legalization of marijuana, and why or why not?
I don't support the legalization of marijuana at this time. I actually went to college at the University of Colorado in Boulder, where it's fairly prevalent and is now legal. But I think there's a lot of questions that are still out there about the recreational use of marijuana, what it does particularly to our youth and their development. But when I talk to my friends in Colorado, they tell me about some of the other things that they're happening. We've got people who are high driving on the roads. One of my teammates told me this guy was going 36, he thought he was going 63. And there's no test for that. We can't pick up people who are driving under the influence. They've seen an increase in homelessness, an increase in robberies. There are social problems that come along with the legalization of marijuana that I don't believe have been addressed yet, and we're not ready to legalize it.
Do you support the legalization of sports betting, and why or why not?
I actually do support the legalization of sports betting. We are an entertainment area. We have Mystic Lake Casino and we have Canterbury, are two terrific places where we already have at Canterbury sports wagering going on with pari-mutuel betting. And I think it would continue to draw people into Scott County as an entertainment destination to have sports betting. And I think quite honestly, it would help Canterbury, and I think it would help the tribe to be able to offer more of these types of gaming options. You can be against the expansion of gambling, and I get that, but we've got gambling going on. It's going on nearby, and we're losing a lot of money and activity that's going to Wisconsin or Iowa when we could be keeping that here in Minnesota.
Our final question tonight. What is your view of mandates regarding masks and vaccination to limit the spread of COVID-19?
Again, another issue that got highly politicized during the emergency powers. Look, I think the governor overstepped his bounds with a statewide mask mandate, with statewide closure of businesses, with vaccine mandates. I authored bills to prevent vaccine passports. I think you should be, ask me to wear if a private business asks me to wear a mask, and I don't want to go there, that's my choice. But I can choose to do that. But don't ask for my health records when I go to a venue. And I thought both Minneapolis and St. Paul overstepped their authority on that. When it came to other mask mandates, again, I don't think the state government should be mandating it. What works in Shakopee doesn't necessarily work in another part of the state. They're going to have different infection rates, different types of transmission going on, and we didn't do a very good job of understanding those regional differences. I mean, just even here in Scott County, New Prague could be vastly different than Shakopee. And so I authored bills to limit the governor's powers to be able to do that, and put the control back in the hands of local business owners to keep their customers and their employees safe, to local school districts to keep their students safe, and really allow parents a better chance to interact with the decision makers. It's much easier to influence a city council or school board than it is to come to the state and expect 201 of us to vote on something.
Our time is running out. Anyone whose questions have not been answered should contact the candidates' campaign offices. Senator Pratt, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, thank you. Let me start off by saying that this primary election is really about how you want your legislature and state government to serve you. There have been bills I voted for that I haven't entirely agreed with, but and maybe had things in there I didn't particularly like. But there was enough in those bills where I felt like I could support them. And you have to realize that when you're in a divided government, which I've been in my entire time in the legislature, you're not going to get everything you want. I sometimes liken it to a football game. Everybody wants to score a touchdown, but sometimes you have to be willing to take 3 or 4 yards and at a time to get things moving in the right direction. I'd also like to remind people that nearly 3/4 of the legislature has turned over since I first was elected. And this primary is about having an experienced and proven leader who knows how to get things done. I want to go back to the legislature and fight for Scott County families to have safe communities, good schools, and push for tax cuts so that families don't just get a one-time check, but get that extra money in their pocket month after month, year after year, to help combat the rising costs of living. And I don't want to just go back to the legislature to fight. I think my record shows that I have the ability to fight to win. And I'd just like to end with, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve my hometown and my home area in the Minnesota Senate, and I'd like to do so for another 4 years. Thank you.
As we close this part of our discussion, please remember that the views expressed in today's debates are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community and has gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate. Instead, we seek to provide the businesses and voters of Shakopee with the information that you need to make informed choices when you vote. Thank you to the audience this evening, those attending, or rather watching, the videos of these debates, and to Hometown Bank for hosting our event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, we thank all the candidates who participated tonight. We appreciate your time and your service to our community. And we thank all the candidates who are running for election to serve their community this year. Primary Election Day is August 9th. Please remember to vote. Thank you and good night.